Welcome to another episode of the Apex Perspective podcast. Today, I have with me Anurag Sharma, who's currently a seasoned executive in digital transformations and strategy. Now, Anurag has started off his career as an application engineer, later on gone to consulting, took on some business roles, and of course, is now working in digital transformations and business strategy. Now, Anurag, can you tell me more from your perspective about your background and how it led you to what you're doing today?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And first of all, thanks for inviting me in your podcast. I'm really happy to have this conversation with you.
It's a pleasure.
Um, yeah. So let me start with a small story, how it all started and how it helped me to shape the career that I have right now. So while I was doing my engineering, during my engineering day, in the first year of engineering, I got the scholarship. Everything was going right. And I started after end of the first year of my engineering, I started realizing it's becoming too academic in nature. I was not getting a really lens of what practicalities can be there, how I can be really impactful once I go into the workforce. That really changed the game of like really saying, how do I approach my studies, my
Mhm.
engineering that is really more useful going forward. So in a way, my approach became very practical oriented. I was not so much concerned about am I getting a scholarship or not, but really applying what I learned and started finding the opportunities where I can say, if we do in the business what we do in the business, how will that work out? And
Mhm.
start thinking about, really think about within the college, talking about college entrepreneurship kind of a thing, or thinking of from the corporate perspective, how we can think about something new that can be created. And that led me to sort of in my exploration in my career, in my early part of my career, that's where it started as an application engineer, but then really started looking into how do I bring in the business from all the new business that could be very meaningful for the world.
Mhm.
And that led me to kind of really thinking about some of the early part of my journey. In some cases I was the youngest, like fresh out of the college, and I was kind of starting to do some of the entrepreneurship, and that led me to kind of learning more through that particular process. And it
Mhm.
helped me to grow to the point where I was fortunate enough to kind of work with many companies, take them through many transformation, really trying to create new line of business, a very sustainable business, which has kind of which I'm so um, fortunate in that way as well. That even now they call me and talk about like, hey, you remember what we started? It's so and so $1 million business now. So I think that's the testament to like I was doing something right throughout the process.
Right, of course. Right. A question for you is about getting into business specifically. So I've had the pleasure of interviewing many principal engineers, primarily from Amazon, highly technical individuals. And what they did a little bit later into their career when they're technical is understand that if they wanted to maximize their impact, they had to understand the business side of companies. So you did that and you did that quite early. When did you realize, because you started off technical, that you had to understand the business side of things to maximize your impact?
Yeah, I think that's where, like what I mentioned, what I started during the my engineering days. I think that was the first time a realization of like you need to think about what is, how do we go and shape your career. And again,
Mhm.
many people, it all depends on what your personality is, what is really exciting you.
Mhm.
There are people who really go deep into the technology, and they're they're fantastically great in that. They love that job. But there are people who think about not so much of that, but it's a combination of things. So one
Mhm.
other thing which I realized, and when I started thinking about it, one other thing I started realizing is there are two type of people. There are people who are really very technical; they're learning the business side of it, and
Mhm.
there are people who are really good in the business, but they lack the technical knowledge, and they get into that. So there are two
Mhm.
parts of that. So if you think about the Amazon of the world, the Google of the world, especially Google of the world, it's a technical to the business, and that combination is really, really great. So for
Correct.
me, it was kind of a 50-50 in some ways. So
Mhm.
very early, that's when I realized what really excites me is, I would not even say technology. It's about how do I solve the problem with putting a different lens to it. and really start thinking about what is this technology or what is this particular problem and how I can solve that can create something new and fascinating for the world, and it creates an impact throughout the process.
Mhm.
So I think
Right.
it's
So,
a different way of thinking.
right, it is. And a lot of what you have to do is be forward thinking, right? And understanding where the market's going and for these companies, which is something you've done a lot in your career and you create some very successful transformations. Tell me about that thinking process about really understanding where companies are going and where markets are going to really maximize the work you're doing at these companies.
No, for sure. So pretty much a lot of these things, if you think about it, one of the common theme is it's nothing new to anybody. I think all of
Mhm.
these new, I would say, business, I would even put transformation starts by really talking about either there is a gap or the
Mhm.
company is not doing well in the space or they have matured in the space they are in, or something totally industry is transforming, so you have to transform. So there are
Mhm.
many ways these type of things happen. And I have been into all those situations where we had a situation where the whole supply chain was changing because of some of the substances, the compliance, some of these the materials that gives a hazardous waste that goes into the landfill, and it creates a problem from the design perspective. So we had to solve that problem. There were situations where now we talked about in the last decade, we talked about the immersive technology, AR, VR. Now that was a technology. It's like, what do we do with that? So
Mhm.
you'll see those type of situations coming in. One thing which I enjoy doing, and it really had served me well, is when a problem like that comes in, my approach is let's not jump into creating a business case.
Mhm.
That's typical business answer to that. Hey, we have
Right.
something, we have the transformation, we are creating a new business. What is a business case? What is a business proposal we need to create? What I've realized is you do that, if you do that, it becomes very static in nature and you are not able to maximize the value. So the approach I have been doing, which has been very helping me a lot, is when something that comes is I kind of talk about to myself in a way is what is the possibilities?
Mhm.
What can we do with it that is differentiated? That is something that nobody else is maybe thinking about. And let's look into all the possibilities of those things and see what is the right way of going after it. Because
Mhm.
I think one thing is there, while I'm trying to solve that particular problem, it's not just me who's trying to solve it. There are 1,000 others who are thinking about
Exactly.
the same thing. So how am I different in that case? So that's where it has served me well. And when I start thinking in that way, it has led me to situations where we have created something which very unique, which has got really changed the game for them. Like I will give you an example where in this one particular situation where I still remember um, the CEO of this company. We were just talking, and he said, "Hey, we are coming up with this SaaS microservices, this technology.
Mhm.
What do you think we can do with it?" I said, "What do you want to do with it?" "I would like to have a business out of it. Really, could change the game." Like, okay, sure, let's give it a shot. So we did
Okay.
not go directly into saying, let's go and create a business plan. I said, you know what, give me a month or so. We started looking, I talked to the team, I tried to understand, and I looked into the art of possibilities. It was
Mhm.
very in the manufacturing domain. Guess what? We did not even go into the manufacturing domain. The idea we had is we said, let's take what we have and really create a solution for the marketing space.
Mhm.
And we created a whole digital buying experience, a very different way of kind of influencing the market. And it was a hit. We created a multi-million dollar just on that one particular solution space. And that
Mhm.
led us to kind of create a much broader space. So I think things like that, I think what I feel helps a lot, just thinking outside the box. The other thing which is also very, very important in this type of situation is, which I very personally think about is, one is what you're trying to create a business, but the other part of is would people come along with you? Because you're not, nobody can do it. It's not a lone wolf kind of a situation. You always have to bring people along with you. They need to believe in it as well. What do you
Right.
need to do to make it believe? And who are the naysayers? And what is the culturally, can this company do what we are trying to do? So all of that factors comes into the play. The technology, how much of revenue you're going to make, and all that's going to happen. But if you're not thinking about this, at least in my experience, you are just putting cart before the horse by saying, I want such and such revenue and I want such and such market share and things like that. It happens once you have the right
Right.
ingredients.
So the question for you is, how do you validate these possibilities? Again, you're navigating new markets and new areas where the market's going. How do you validate the possibilities in the company and verify this is actually worth the risk or worth going into?
Yeah, there are three, four factors, I would say. One is,
Mhm,
if you're thinking about that possibilities, is this something, first is really thinking about, is this what the customer base you're going for? Would they even relate you with that?
mhm,
Even far-fetched way. If they say, I cannot see this company delivering on such and such solution, you have a
mhm,
huge barrier of entry. So that's one thing. The second, of course, you need to understand. I think that's where now the art of possibilities with the data and business, the typical business acumen comes into the play. You need to have the data. You need to
mhm,
understand, if this is an art of possibilities, this is the particular option. Is this some? What is the size of the market?
mhm.
So that's where you're bringing that aspect of it. And I think, let's be realistic about it, whatever the size of the market is, and let's be realistic about what percentage you can take, or what is the size. Sometimes it could be just maybe 500 million. Sometimes it may be a billion or maybe more. So I think that's important to have those two things. And the third thing is, do we have a skill set and a mindset to, for people to kind of start thinking about it? Do we
Yes.
I have a skill set? If there is nobody who can even think about it, who can come along and kind of develop something around that piece, I think it's going to be a lost cause, because
Mhm,
you'll be doing it, all those things, but nothing's going to come out of it. And the fourth, which is very, very important, is the market ready for that or not? Many
mm.
times we do a lot of incubations, we do a lot of things, and the market is not ready. I'll give you an example real
Right.
quick. It was back in 2014, 2015. We were working on something where we were really applying the machine learning and thinking of creating a machine learning as a service for one of the domain. We created, it was a fantastic, fantastic solution. It was doing amazing stuff. It was like
Mhm.
early AI kind of a situation. Market was not ready for that. We talked with a lot of folks. We talked with a lot of companies. It just fell flat. So we have to
Right.
really stop that thing. We have to just stop it.
Well, a question for you on that regard is, how do you distinguish between what there's this phenomenon in business where sometimes customers don't say, are not able to tell you what they want, but you can create a solution that they actually might need. So how do you distinguish between what they might need and what they're actually just not ready for?
Yeah, that's a very tricky one. I think in some market validation, I think that's where the MVP concept always works. Let's not put all your eggs in one basket. Let's not try to go all in and make it perfect. The approach we have taken, or what I have done for myself, is, of course, when those possibilities, that helps us to understand, seeing it in a different lens. And
Mhm,
then we need to think about a sample market. Now, when I'm saying sample market, people may interpret that as a primary or secondary research and or marketing research. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about really creating in a first MVP with a minimalistic investment. I think that's also important. And really find out the right type of profile to go and check on it.
mhm.
And when you're checking on it, that's where you create then that you test the market, and that's when you help whether there's a market or not, or it's going
Okay.
to work or not. The other thing, which is very, that's something has happened in the last 10, 15 years, is with the coming of the SaaS. I think the art of creating a quick, dirty, showcasing things has become pretty easy. That becomes like, hey, here are the possibilities out of what you're talking about. Let's float it out. You'll be amazed the reaction that people give and the type of market validation you get. You will not get through a very deeper data analysis or things like that. That just creates a totally different wave of things they can create.
Mhm. Excellent. So what I want to do now is go ahead and shift this conversation towards the digital transformations and the transformation of companies, which you have an excellent track record in. As you know, there's a very low success rate with digital transformations, which is around 33%. So a question for you is because you've led successful ones. What's the difference between a company that has successful transformations and ones that don't?
Yeah, I think most of the time I've seen people who struggle is they are really looking transformation as a way of changing the business, which it
Hmm.
is. But the starting point is the places where they really the success or failure is defined as a people. I've seen technology. If we talk about the technology or the business transformations, I think
Hmm.
that is the least of the worry. I think the first thing first is how do you bring along the all of your people, your company, employees who are working with you, along with journey, and how are you communicating it? I think those two, if I have to pick only two, that's what I'm going to say: people and how the executives are really communicating. If they don't have a conviction, they are not
Hmm.
communicating in a clear way, it's very difficult for peoples to go and kind of rally around that. And it's not just at the high level people, it's not just the executives the mid level, it has to flow to the right people.
Hmm.
Because when you're talking of the transformation, you're not asking people to do what they're doing, you're
Hmm.
asking people to get away from what you're doing. That is huge. Nobody wants
And
that.
adopt new measures.
Adopt new things, and because if you're not able to show them what their role is in the future, there is going to be huge resistance. So it's
Right.
so important. You can drive. I mean, I have my own failures from there where transform. We talked about the transformation, but the management is not ready. The culturally, we are not thinking about let's try something new.
Hmm.
That's where the resistance comes in, and it becomes a problem. So I think the success that's I would say that's the difference between a successful transformation and not successful. It's not about the technology, it's not about the business, it's not about the business model, it's about the people and how executives or the management or the leadership is really talking about here's what we need to transform, what does it
Hmm.
mean to you and to the company.
So a lack of clear vision, and then number two is really a lack of engaging the key stakeholders, right? Now, when we talk about AI transformation, which is now a subject you've become acquainted with, as you know, digital transformations themselves, like we discussed beforehand, have a low success rate. And with AI specifically, you could have individuals, even employees, that are more resistant to AI change specifically. So, how do you think an AI transformation needs to be addressed or needs to be strategized when we already have low success rates with digital transformations?
So I think that itself is a wrong way of kind of saying about the AI.
Okay.
It's not really the AI transformation. I think just by saying AI transformation, if we are behaving like it's a transformation, I think
Hmm.
that's where I think it's not been positioned in a way
Okay.
very meaningful. AI is it's not like any other technologies. It's not about what we had seen in the cloud. It's not about what we have seen in the immersive technologies or anything else that has happened in the past 20, 25 years. It's a fundamentally changing the way the businesses are made and run. It is totally
Hmm.
changing the fundamentals of it. Think about the days of early days when the web internet came out of early late 90s, early 2000s. That fundamentally changed this thing, because then
Hmm.
in the back in the days there was a client server architecture. There were so many of those ways which was on-prem and things like that. On-prem was still there, but it fundamentally changed the way you approach it. Now what we are
Hmm.
talking about the AI is you don't need software developers. You don't need a you don't need to do certain things. Certain jobs are being in question. So it's I don't think the success is by saying we need to do the AI transformation. I think
Hmm.
it's all about talking about something I talk about like AI paradox. It's everywhere, but it's actually nowhere from the value perspective. So you got to start thinking about really AI fluency across the country, across your company. Something
Right.
that Accenture CEO talks about, and I'm a big fan of what the way she has kind of talked about it. So it's important that everybody in the organization think about how they can do and what they can do with AI, and
Hmm.
really think about where AI is meaningful to do what.
Hmm.
One is, you think about it, AI in my product. Why would customer think about that? So it's more of a product specific AI insertion or AI first. Second is
Hmm.
operation, and that's a huge one. You can reduce your cost, which is again, it's a paradox. You can reduce the cost, but the AI cost significantly is increasing these days. So, but
Hmm.
at the same time, you need to think about how these operations could be made much more meaningful to you. The third, which I kind of talk about, the GNA, like a general administration stuff, how that can be improved with AI. And the fourth one, which I talk a lot about in my other places, is ecosystem. Because nowadays, use the value of AI, the power of AI, to create your business and let others create business for you. Because
Hmm.
ecosystem is not about you developing everything. You are creating a platform and let people come and develop it with you,
Very good.
provide your capability, your data, of course, all the data security and all those things, and let people contribute to those things. That is going to be
Mhm.
huge. I think
Right.
we talked about that in the API, but now AI is going to take it to the next level. So it's so much, no, so much. It's not about transformation. It's about the complete revamp of what you're doing from the business perspective. And that's how
Okay.
I see it.
I love it. I'll address one thing you said, and then we'll go over this system and this process you have about the evolution from products to platforms, and then platforms to ecosystems. But the quick thing I wanted to address was really your perspective on really understanding what AI can do. I think it's a really good, great point about that, because there's a large contingent of people or even organizations that are applying AI due to the fact that it's a trend, rather than looking at what can be done measurably or what is the measurable impact I'm trying to create, and reverse engineering how AI can be applied with that. So, what do you think is the approach to really maximize impact with AI, as opposed to utilizing AI because it's considered a trend and it would look good for the company?
Yeah, and I think it's there is no one right or wrong answer for that. It all very
Okay.
depends on the company to company. What I can tell you is what AI is not for.
Okay.
Lot of places I have seen is AI is for not for automation. You know,
Hmm.
it's kind of like what are you talking, Anurag? It does a lot of automation, but a lot of times what people start thinking about is, I have an AI. Here is my process. Why don't you automate it? Okay, but you have to think about the cost. Is it worth applying that for this? What you need to think about is, could I create the AI as an agent workers, as your own workforce, which can do something, from the goal-based AI agents particularly, which can
Hmm.
do something in a much faster, which leads to some business impact going forward. That's how we need to think about it. If you think about that, you're really talking about the value. You're not talking about just automating something, saying, "Oh, I'm going to reduce the cost." So I think, yeah, I can expand as I can talk hours and hours and those things, but in the interest of time,
Okay.
I can say that I think AI is, you need to be very specific about what AI you are trying to use for what business advantage. If it is
Hmm.
not, just move on. Just move on.
It's not the
And
best use of
yeah.
resources if it's not actually creating a measurable impact. I agree with that. Now, you recently founded Shift and Transform, and I wanted to understand this process about helping particularly organizations move from products to platforms, and then of course that platform to ecosystems. That's a really unique process I've heard too much about before. Tell me a little more about that, the thesis behind that process.
Yeah, so something I have been thinking for quite some time. I mean, I have been doing this transformation. I have been working, we have been talking to numerous companies, have worked thousands and thousands of people over my career. I kind of realized that I think I have been in the cusp of like that strategic shift and the
Mhm.
transformation journey. That led to me creating this shift and transform. It's kind of a platform for me to share what I know and help
Mhm.
work with other like-minded people or anybody who needs any kind of help and collaborate to find solutions on something. So here's my way of sharing my wealth of knowledge, whatever I have learned, if I can be of help to
Yeah.
others. So shift and transform is a way for me to kind of share that that information to everybody and collaborate with folks who really want, who I can provide something from my own learnings. So it's more driven from that perspective than anything else. So I have been starting to kind of do more and more in that respect, and of course AI, and we talked about the product platform and ecosystem. That is something which is the topic, and it's something I have really done right now. So I have been talking a little bit more about that. What are the things one should think about? How somebody can use it? Because people have that inception, like I'm selling a product, but I'm
Mhm.
behaving like a platform. And a platform is something very different. An ecosystem is really about not one person or one product. It's about the network effect that you're creating, where there are many people who are contributing to the business, and you need to
Mhm.
understand who you are and where do you fit in that ecosystem. Are you a provider? Are you a builder? Are you a data provider? There are multiple ways you can be part of that ecosystem and really create the value. So when I'm talking about that product platform and ecosystem, I kind of talk about that. Like, let's think about who you are, what you're selling, and what your place in that ecosystem, so that you can maximize value for yourself in that respect. So that's the essence of that particular thought process.
Love it. And that's an excellent point there. And I think that's a really good perspective. I was curious about the ecosystem itself. What's the value from an ecosystem compared to the other particular situations?
So ecosystem is, think about it as it's a network effect.
Right.
In a simple way, if I talk about, if you are think about what Amazon is doing. Amazon
Mhm.
is providing the infrastructure. That infrastructure is being used by all over the world, and they create their products. Now they are now launching something, and they are letting others create that their product, and so on and so forth. Now they
Right.
are enabling that ecosystem to create more and more. If you think about many others,
Same thing with
Microsoft.
TikTok Shop.
There we go. Yeah. Think about Google. Think about the Waze. When Waze came in, what it really used Google Map, and it created a totally new mapping system. And then Google, absorbed it in a way.
Love
So
it.
that's the way the ecosystem is, and especially
Yeah.
in some of these cloud native companies has been doing good. I think it's very interesting for the traditional companies who have been in the business for like 30, 40, 50 years. When they are transitioning into this world, they have a great ecosystem. This is a
Right.
great way to kind of really create a multiplying factor with really leveraging their ecosystem and increasing and maximizing the value, not for themselves, but for their each node in the ecosystem, because that leads to you money for you.
It creates an opportunity to enable people to create their own unique value that doesn't just contribute to themselves, but to other people and your own self as well, or your own enterprise. That's a very unique way to look at it, and that's what TikTok Shop has done. Amazon's been doing it for a while. I've noticed that's a really great perspective you just provided. So what I want to do now is go ahead and change the pace of the conversation to a little bit more about you on the personal side. And the first question I have for you is, what is something about you that you wish more people knew about?
Sorry, say that again.
What is something about you or your life that you wish more people were aware of or knew about?
Well, if
It's
I
a
have to
hard
pick,
question.
it's a hard question, yeah, but I think people who would know me today, there's some
Mhm,
of the things they will be very say, I can see Anurag it that way. But I think what when you talk of the transformation, one of the transformation is, I was a very introvert, very, you know, not somebody who would talk to people kind of a thing. I
mhm.
transformed myself quite significantly.
Wow.
I'm glad I did, because I think that's so important. And as you grow in your life journey, you need to explore and find new possibilities, make yourself uncomfortable. I think
It's
that's
hard.
something which I've been
It's
doing a
very
lot.
hard.
It's very hard, but you got to do that. And I think I do
Mhm,
that quite a lot. Many times my family don't like it. Many times the company I work for, they don't like that either. But I think it's important to make yourself very uncomfortable and find
mhm.
new space for yourself. That's how you grow. And
Right.
I love that. I love that. And my life, I mean, a lot of the careers I have chosen, I have very purposefully chosen a situation where there's nothing, and I have to create something from that nothing, and I feel good about it. I really feel good
Mhm.
about it, because it gives you that excitement, and it's something new to learn and something new to do.
Anurag, what did you learn about yourself turning from an introvert to an extrovert? Because that's not something, or at least mitigating the introvert, right? What did you learn about yourself? Because that's not an easy thing to do.
I mean, you can surprise. I mean, what I felt is, I mean, I was I was just
Did you know you're
worried
capable
for
of it?
nothing.
Did you
I
know
was
you were
worried for nothing.
capable?
I had it in me. I just never realized it was in me, and then I started
Yeah.
doing something, and like, I can do something good. So that was a pretty interesting, and then that gives you self confidence for sure.
And for, I'm assuming, other endeavors as well. Because if you didn't know you were capable of this particular route or this particular endeavor and you became capable, I'm assuming this could apply to your perception of other skills where you're not as good yet, but potentially you could get better at. I'm assuming that did that impact other parts of your life.
Absolutely, absolutely. That all the risk I have taken in my career, in my life, I think
Mhm.
that kind of came from that confidence. Yeah, I can do
Right.
it. It's
Yeah.
okay if things doesn't work out. It's okay. Um, I can find something better, or maybe there is a different way of to do those things. Or there's always a learning, even if it something failed. So
So
that
what
positivity is also a good way to think about it.
Love it. Love that. One last question before we move on to the quick fitness segment is, I'm assuming there's a lot of changes that happen between when you were in your 20s and you now. But a question for you is, what do you think is the biggest difference, if you can name one specifically, between you now and you when you were in your 20s?
Oh, that's interesting. I think what I feel when I look back, I mean, I feel good about the generation I have been. We have seen a lot, you know, lot of changes happen, and boy, oh boy, that's the fun part, because we have seen from things where we were out as a kid, just going out and playing things, or in the 20s, just exploring things, the internet, coming of the internet, and then all of that stuff, to now with so much of technology changes. So I think in some of those way we are one of the very fortunate generation who could see all of these changes, good and bad. Think of the COVID. Who would have known we have to see something like that? So if I look back from that to now, I think it feels in some way blessed to have gone through and had an experience that really transformed to what I am right now.
Mhm.
And I could now feel there is a lot more I can give to the society and the things I will be working on. So I think that's something is in my mind. Like, how do I now from here on think about giving back, continue with that positive impact that I have been creating? So I think that's something I kind of see when you're looking to the
Love
20s
it.
to the now.
Yeah, love it. So what I'll do now is go ahead and share a very concise perspective regarding health and fitness, and then we'll go ahead and conclude the podcast with Anurag's plans for this year, whether that be professionally or personally. Now, the main perspective I want to provide on health and fitness is really how to make it as time efficient as possible. Anurag, as you know, a lot of my audience are entrepreneurs and executives, so I'd like to make this advice as relevant to them, which is why I want to be time efficient. So the biggest problem you can really see here is a lot of strategies are location dependent, meaning they're specifically fixed in one location, like a gym or studio. And the days that you're traveling, the days that you're taking calls, the days you are not able to adhere to that traditional process are the days you're missing the progress. And on a long enough time frame, you won't be attending to the requirements of making that transformation, and potentially you might not even get the end goal. So how can you really restructure this to be a bit more easy to adhere to, or one that you're actually able to adhere, a process you're actually able to adhere to, so you can actually get that end goal? The idea is you have to make an approach that actually adapts to your schedule as opposed to you making time for it. And what that requires and what that consists of is a process that's location independent as opposed to location dependent. Now, location independent means you can do something that's more adapted to your schedule, more so anytime, anywhere. And something specific I would recommend is leveraging step count, which is something I've always been talking about, which I continuously talk about, because you can do this anywhere there's ground underneath you. And for 99% of your life, I'm assuming there's going to be ground underneath you. You can do this while you're listening to this podcast, while you're potentially traveling, or anywhere there's ground underneath you, which is essentially far more easy to adhere to than having to shift your schedule around to go to a gym for. And that's the idea behind it: is can you create a strategy that can actually be something you can adhere to, so you can actually get that end goal? And that's what I actually primarily leverage, which is step count to lose my weight of 70 pounds and actually keep it off. So hopefully it gives a different perspective to what can be done to actually get that end goal. And hopefully it provides some value today. So what we'll do now is go ahead and conclude the fitness conversation and move on to Anurag's plans for this year. So Anurag, can you tell me a little bit more about your plans for this year?
For sure. Yeah, but that was impressive for
Thank
the
you.
growth. That's great. What's my plan for this year? I think I think one of the things which I really want to start thinking more about the shift and transform. I really want to start kind of sharing more and more because there is a lot going on, and if I can share more and more, think about
Mm-hmm.
how I can help people who are going through the same transformation or situations I have been in. If I can provide some value to whosoever wants to work, that will be great. That's something I like to do. The second is more about, again, more from the professional perspective. I think I would like to start thinking about really creating a meaningful, um, I won't say impact, but insertion of like what does a really AI means in the way what I'm trying to do professionally.
Mm-hmm.
And let's be careful about that, but at the same time impactful about that. So I think those will be a really nice thing to kind of fund for my own education and kind of continue doing the impact I have been doing. And the second is how do I start sharing and collaborating with people on more things which I have already done.
And Anurag, is LinkedIn the best place to learn more about you and the work you're doing?
Absolutely. Yes.
Okay, excellent. We'll make sure to check out Anurag's LinkedIn. Thank you for coming on the podcast, Anurag. It was a pleasure to have you on. This was Aryan Mohin.